Hey, hey, everybody! This is Perch. I'm here with Joe. How are you?
I'm okay. How are you?
I'm okay. I didn't go to a mall today, so I'm in a happy mood. So
Yeah, a friend of mine was telling me they were at a mall today. I'm like, what the hell's wrong with you?
yeah, I mean, I played the traditional. I used to my Christmas holiday tradition is not really today. What I like to do is go to the mall on. Oh, I see. I have two computers going. That was stupid of me. Anyway, sorry. Pro tip: don't be an idiot. So what was I saying? Oh, I like to go to the mall on Christmas Eve and spend the last 2 hours, just find a coffee shop or something, hang out there, and then watch. Usually, I would say the adult men run around in a frantic, insane state. It's the best time.
Oh yeah.
You feel really good about yourself, and you laugh at other people. It's so wonderful. They can't find what they want. It's great. Anyway.
It so is. I mean, it's a shame that the internet's helping make that a thing of the past, but then it's even more fun when you do catch people like that now.
Oh yeah, absolutely. It's it's anyway. Hello to everybody in the chat. It's
Right.
great Thanksgiving, and you, I don't know, whatever you were doing. I don't know. Are you drinking? What are you drinking today?
I found I went to the liquor store the other day. I found this Jim Beam Red Stag. It's a black cherry liquor infused whiskey.
Nice.
And
Okay.
I got some cherry Coke to just enough to slightly change the color.
Excellent. All right. Nice. And so nice and kind of sweet, but whiskey taste.
Yeah.
I'm trying. It's almost very similar. I got this Jeremiah Weed spiced whiskey, and then I mix it with a little bit of amaretto, and it provides some sweetness to it. But it's I'll bet it's actually a similar flavor to what you have going on. It's
Probably,
good.
yeah. No, this is a good time.
Yeah, I was, for the people who are connected with me on Twitter. No, I was not adding alcohol to all those things. That was a bit. I promise. I was not. I was not spiking every single dish that I was feeding my children, but maybe a few. Yeah,
there you go. But yeah, no, this is nice. I got a lot of ice. I poured myself I guess it would technically be a quadruple, or
nice. Yes,
and just enjoying myself.
The more you drink at home, the more that you're like, oh, why do I need to stop with the double? It says 2 ounces, but I could easily multiply that by 3. And and then when you go out and you drink outside, you feel like you're really getting ripped off.
Oh yeah. Oh, forget it. I'm in New York. It's awful.
Yeah. I hate the way they jack the prices up. San Diego Comic-Con jacks the prices up for alcohol so much. You go on in the gas lamp district, and the drink is like $18, and it's like 2 ounces of watered down whiskey, and you just anyway. Sorry, I'm off track.
Yeah. No, it's fine. This is where it pays to be a really hot comic pro, so you can get someone like working at Valiant or something to be like, I'll pick up this tab. Tell me what you want to do with I don't know, Dr. Mirage or whatever.
Yeah.
There you go.
Exactly. That's really what it's all about. You get paid in alcohol, and
no, it's exactly like working in politics.
Yeah, exactly.
That's basically was the same thing. Like, we'll overwork you, but booze.
Yeah. So it was funny to me. Of course, I've done work today, and I've got lots of friends who work in the tech industry. And it's always fun to watch people come in for the first time. They're like, man, this company is great. They got like free snacks and then free alcohol. It's amazing. They must just love us. And it's like, no, they don't. You're never going to leave.
Yeah.
You silly bastard. You're never going to leave.
Oh yeah. No, it's like when you buy those, I've done the office managing before. Like those snacks are not that much. It's it's really
that's the comic publisher of the future, I think, where they do stuff in house and you get people to come in. It wouldn't work most places, but then you just stock it with food and booze, and then you pay nothing. And that was there you
go. They'll never leave. It's
no. Actually, I saw I saw you did a video today with Wes actually on his channel about pay, and I wanted to ask you about that a little bit. So, this perception, and granted, it is a difference between somebody who's at the indie at a comic company that's tiny and unknown versus like a big writer at Marvel or DC. But there's this perception that all the creators, the artists and the writers, are making like no money like
yeah,
$200 a month. But that your video was a great one because it's not really true.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, I think people have taken like, oh, there's no money in comics to take it to like this like literal place of like, yeah, these people are just working for free or like working for nothing, or
Yeah.
they all work 3 jobs and also juggle comics, and it's just like, no, it's I mean, different places pay different rates.
Sure.
But I mean, when you look at the time involved too, if you're getting paid a rate and you're not the person in charge of promoting it, like that's not too bad, like time wise, when you break down how much like for me to write or edit,
Yeah.
how much I'm making, like it's not bad. I mean, you do have to do multiple books if you're a writer or an editor, but if you're an artist at like a decent sized publisher, if you could probably get by between doing a monthly book and just like commissions and stuff on the side, like you know.
Yeah, and I mean, it's not like I don't know. It feels like people are really off. This goes down a weird tangent, but there was this survey that was done last year of like how much money do you need to be until you can retire? Like what is the number? And what they found was like half the respondees said, "I need about $500,000 to retire,"
Yeah,
which is way too low. I'll just tell you that's not enough. I should add to this. And then those people are saying, "I'm going to retire at like 45, 50." Like
sure.
that's not enough money unless you're planning on dying at like 52, and then, then it works out. Or people are saying, enough money to retire is like 25 to 30 million. And that's too much. You don't need that. I mean, it'd be great, but you don't need that much money either. Feels like comics is a lot the same way. It's that, there are definitely people underpaid, but it's not like you're living on the street. It's not like you're living in a private island. I mean, maybe if you're Bendis, but other than that,
Sure. I mean, there's also like there's a difference between like retiring in like central Pennsylvania or retiring on like North Shore, Long Island. Like there's different needs and different things, and there's also like it's comics does get into like a weird sort of place where there are other things that you don't get from like a 9 to 5 kind of job, like royalties, and there is that chance that you might get a book that's a little more evergreen, that you kind of get a decent chunk of change every so often from.
It was just an interesting conversation. I do encourage people to go check that out and look at it. It's a good. It puts things in perspective, I think, and that's something that is always good.
Absolutely. Speaking of putting things in perspective, though, did you hear the Joss Whedon news this week?
Did I? Hang on. Oh, see, you're making me jump ahead. There we go.
Oh,
yeah.
Damn, sorry.
I did hear the Joss Whedon news.
We didn't prepare, folks.
We're there. So, what is Tell us what is the Joss Whedon news?
So apparently, Joss was asked to leave the show he created at HBO.
Yeah, not good. Do we know why?
We're not 100% sure. I mean, there's a couple of reasons. We did do that Astonishing X-Men retrospective this week, and the timing is really close.
Yeah.
There's also a lesser possibility that maybe it has something to do with the Ray Fisher allegations and and Warner having to investigate Joss Whedon, and Warner owns HBO, but that's probably less of a factor than.
It's probably more a retrospective. Yeah.
Yeah, it's almost certain.
It's almost I enjoy. So what's funny about that retrospective is I first of all, I enjoyed it immensely. Always fun to do those with you.
Thank you.
I still don't hate that comic, although I think it definitely came across that way.
Yeah, I like that comic. I will read that comic again. Like I can guarantee you.
Yeah.
Part of that is it's a quick read, admittedly. Like it's not, it'll take you like an afternoon or so to binge through it, but yeah, it's I guess it did come across like we hated it, but we didn't.
No, absolutely not. I own the omnibus. I'm staring at it now. It's a good book. It's funny though. There's a lot that you can make fun of, and it got me thinking about comics in general and just how maybe it seemed like it was easier to dislike something and say you disliked it and not have people assume that you hated its guts. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Today it's like you have to love it all, or you have to just fully hate it. There's no like, hey, this was kind of stupid, but I enjoyed reading it.
Oh yeah, and I mean, like, this also translates to movies, and we've talked about this before too. You know, like I have definitely watched The Room more than I've watched Casablanca.
Oh no! Wait a minute. Okay.
we haven't talked about it like that specifically, but I've definitely watched that movie more than Casablanca. I've seen Casablanca a few times. I've probably seen The Room like a dozen times.
Yeah. Okay. Well, fair enough.
You know, but like if you then asked me, if you then assumed that I thought The Room was a better movie than Casablanca, you would be horribly mistaken.
Right. Makes sense.
You know?
I mean, I'm trying to think of this now, and this would be a good conversation for maybe another time. But let's see if we can. Of the X-Men storylines, if you think about the big kind of eras, roughly, like you have the Grant Morrison time, you have the Chris Claremont time, and maybe that's too big a chunk, but and then you have the Joss Whedon Astonishing X-Men, you have the Matt Fraction on an Island, the Kieran Gillian split team thing. I don't know. To me, I thought we said this in retrospective, but to me, the Joss Whedon Astonishing X-Men is probably in the middle of those of likability.
Yeah, I mean it's likable. It's easy to digest. I think is what really helps, because like there's a lot of impenetrable X-Men if you aren't already an X-Men fan.
Right.
Like you can give Astonishing X-Men to like some schlub off the street and they'll figure it out. If you're just like, you should check out X-Men, you don't know X-Men, here's Messiah Complex, they're going to be like, what the fuck is going on?
Oh, yeah. A lot of these, I mean, the Extinction Agenda, I think, is a good enough story. I like Fall of the Mutants better. But the Extinction Agenda, you can't, like, it is very hard to hand that to somebody out of nowhere and say, here's a comic. I mean,
oh, yeah. You can't hand Mutant Massacre to someone that doesn't know X-Men. You give Mutant Massacre to someone, they open it up, they're like, oh my god, all these people are getting murdered. What the fuck are the Marauders? And like, Power Pack Thor, what the hell is going on?
Why are they crucifying Angel in the sewer? Like, what is going on?
And then, like, why is like Apocalypse like this sort of like guy running around in the background, like collecting people? Like, it's
yeah. No, it's weird.
Like, yeah, it's weird, especially with no context. Like, you could, you know, the Dark Phoenix saga probably you could give to someone, and just through osmosis of like being aware through the movies and things about vaguely what's happening.
You know, Claremont, it's interesting because, and this is my experience in the stores, Claremont tended to, it was an easier in for people for whatever reason. Claremont seemed to, it was easier for new customers to jump onto his comics, even though it was very dense and lots of subplots. It's still, I don't know, he had a way of getting people into the comic that I think very few writers can replicate.
Yeah, I mean, part of it's the writing at the time, because it was easy and not like, I feel like it might be like repetitive isn't the right word, but like there was like reiterating things from time to time to like keep you kind of like on the ball. Like they would explain the characters a little bit. They, you know, like, and their relationships as they went on, like, you know, in part because, you know, Claremont was, you know, verbose. I mean, even for the time he was verbose, but yeah, it's easier to wrap your head around it, but also like, and this is the problem too with how comics have been collected, and we're finally like breaking through that with, I think, these epic collections and omnibus editions. But if you gave someone like the original, like the earlier trade versions of the Dark Phoenix saga, Like, Mastermind had already been manipulating Jean for like several issues.
Oh yeah, that had been going for a while.
You open up that trade, and you're like, what the hell's going on? Like, who's this guy? Like, why is Jean dressed like she's a Victorian? Like, what is happening?
Yep. And also, in fairness, I think you also kind of wanted to find out. Whereas some of the storylines today, you like, they tease these things. You're like, I don't really care about knowing the answer to that.
Yeah, no. Or the only answer you care about hasn't been mentioned since House of X Powers of 10 ended, and we just forget about Moira.
Yeah,
because it's only been like 100 fucking issues since then.
Only a few. So I wanted to, well, first of all, I got so many things to talk about, but in regards to Astonishing X-Men, before we close, and then we got a couple questions. Not to put you on the spot, and it's too early, but what do you think? Do you think Astonishing X-Men, that run, or Ten of Swords? What's going to hold up better in 10 years?
Oh, Astonishing, like by leaps and bounds.
Yeah.
Like, because it's an easy entry point. Ten of Swords is not at all close.
Oh, that's true.
Being an easy entry point. Like, you can't just be like, if someone picked up Ten of Swords, just like, oh, I've heard of this X-Men, and they're like, there's a talking island, and like, what the fuck? No, like, just
yeah, absolutely. I think, well, I'll see. I'm going to let some time go by and then kind of read all these comics at once. I think the thing that people are going to discover about Ten of Swords when they read it all at once is the pacing of that thing is going to be just absolutely insane.
It's insane, but here's my theory that I thought of a little beforehand. Ten of Swords, and the way it was written and constructed, it's written and approached as if it were an MMORPG.
Okay.
Because the way it's done is it's world building above all else.
Yeah, that's true.
So, what would be exciting? Playing a game where you're immersed in the story. You can pick any of these characters and be like, oh, we're on Krakoa, and there's like portals that take us to other worlds and Morocco, and there's this like tournament, and there's all these like, there's fetch quests, and there's riddles to solve and things like that. It is a video game. It is an MMORPG that puts that world building above a strong narrative.
That's a fascinating way to look at it. I think you're absolutely right. I think that's going to change the way I read it next time.
Yeah, like, this book made me go like, this fucking sucks, but I play the game. Like,
that's the quote they need for the cover of the hardcover.
Yeah, but like, I would play this game. It would be a fun, like, Final Fantasy 14 or whatever type game.
Yep.
Like,
and it makes as much sense as Final Fantasy 14 in some of those games. Hey, so somebody asked real quick, is way above. So now I'm scrolling up and up and up. So people want more of these, and would we open a poll of options for what to do deep dive into? I mean, I'm sure, absolutely, but we do have one coming up. You want to say what it is?
One that we have coming up is the Silver Age Legion of Superheroes, in particular, a deep dive into like the early like Jim Shooter stuff. Yeah, because it's always been interesting to me how so many people talk about Jim Shooter. Like, Jim Shooter was born, and then he ran Marvel,
right?
and there's this big gap. Like, people will mention like, oh, he started writing comics when he was 14, but that's not important. The important thing is he ran Marvel. But I think it would help people to understand how Jim Shooter got there. Yes. He created so many characters, so many little bits and pieces in the DC universe that were used decades later.
Yep.
I mean, creating the Dominators, and using them in the Invasion storyline, while I think around the end of Jim's tenure, when Jim ended up getting fired from Marvel, around then I think was when the Invasion storyline in DC happened, and he had created the Dominators.
Yeah, so I'm excited for that too, because I video after video or I see dozens, hundreds probably commentary about Jim Shooter, and it does feel like the majority of them have either forgotten or never knew that he wrote comics. And
yeah.
It is just he was an editor and he ran a company, but yeah, there's a lot of great stuff in there, and I'm with you. I think that those comics kind of lay out the platform of in some cases why he was successful, why he was able to do what he did, and the IP he created and everything else. So I think you're going to love this. I think it was going to be a great retrospective, and then we won't reveal, but then we have the one that's going to piss everybody off.
Yes, we have the one that'll piss everybody off, and then we'll probably start. Then we'll looking at other things. But we promise this one on Jim Shooter is going to be a nice, fun one, and yeah.
There definitely will. It's a fun one, and they should be up and going on iTunes soon. Hopefully that this weekend we get that all taken care of.
And I love both Journey into Mystery by Kieran Gillen and New Teen Titans by Wolfman and Perez. If we did New Teen Titans, I think we do right from the beginning through the Judas Contract. I think that's the retrospective.
100%. Yeah. And especially, I'm watching the Titan show right now. It's interesting to see how many nods to that run they do, and do very poorly in that show.
Yes, there's a lot of poor Teen Titans adaptations that have happened. But with Kieran Gillen's Journey into Mystery run, I actually own a page from that run.
Oh, nice.
It's a Mitch Breitweiser page. So I'm probably one of the few people that paid Mitch money online and got something. Ooh, burn!
Take a shot.
Ooh, across the bow.
Oh, the chat's gonna. Okay, well, fun times. Well, good for you. I'm glad you actually got something. That is, that's good. And speaking of getting something, so here's Wonder Woman from JSA talking about people getting syphilis.
Yeah, I mean, that picture makes you wonder how many stars we don't see.
I shouldn't. God damn it! I'm drinking. The point where I take a little drink of whiskey, burns. I wonder this too, because, like, I mean, first of all, I remember a customer telling me at one point that this, and he had it mapped out that all the stars on the underwear there mapped to a state, and that he had figured out which states went to which stars, which is insane. But it does a number of questions comes out of there, actually. This was what's funny is I posted this up, and a couple people got on, were like, "This is why I hate current comics." It's like, oh, this is from 2004, actually, and this is Jeff Johns writing. Actually, what kills me is the look on Firestorm's face, which is just. Yeah, actually, some people are saying this too. He looks really excited about either genocide or syphilis, one of those.
100%.
Why would I'm curious why? I mean, clearly they knew Wonder Woman's talking. The women she's talking to look nonplussed about the whole thing. I love how the artist had to. I don't know. I would love to, like, ask people. So why did you decide to draw him having a good time? Anyway. It's all little things. No, by the way, we are not hinting we're doing Identity Crisis. We're going to talk about a comic that is actually terrible that I think the vast majority of people love. Yeah, although
I do happen to own the Absolute Edition of Identity Crisis because it was like half off somewhere, and I was like, fuck it. And so I do own that. It's something we can, if we ever want to, shrink down and dance on everybody's brains till they die, we could do a retrospective on that.
That book sold really well. It was a financial success.
It sold really well. It still looks pretty.
Yeah, it's
like
not bad.
Rags Morella's art still holds up. Like there's some people that like go back to like old comics and are, not that it's like that old. I'm also saying this as someone in my 30s, and if there's people that are in their 20s in the chat, they're going to be like, of course it's very old, you crazy old people. It's pre-New 52. But, and I die a little inside, but it's fine.
It's that's a fun book. But we have current things. So next week, I also in one of those kind of funny / sad moments. Last week when we were showing this, I think a few of us were looking at this, and I had Ash and Brian on the show. We're looking at this like, wow, it's a lot of comics this month. It's like, no, sir, this is next week. This is next week, and this is not all the comics. It's not even close. There's probably this list is about half the comics that are coming out, and I keep promising that one day I'll put them all in there. But this is what we're getting next week, and the exciting part is that Ten of Swords is over, but King in Black begins. So
I'm glad we got mere days reprieve of Marvel events. But I think the book everyone's really excited for, and I think I speak for everyone when I say Atlantis Attacks 5.
Oh, yeah.
People won't shut up about Atlantis Attacks. And it's just like, when's the next issue coming out? And like, finally, everyone can shut up and read Atlantis Attacks.
Finally out. It's a King in Black crossover, I believe, and that just makes it doubly valuable. That's how it works.
Great. No, yeah. That's wonderful. They're still putting out Metal Men, huh?
Yeah. So Dan Didio has a book out this next week. Good times. Good. And Batman Catwoman #1, long delayed, but we did get the promotion from Tom King confirming they will fuck.
Well, considering it looks like she's shoving a vibrator in herself in that one like Clayman cover, that makes sense.
Yeah, I can't believe they're letting him get away with this. But
I can't believe it either.
Yeah, I don't know. Are you? What do you think? So Batman Catwoman, is this a book you're looking forward to? Is it like here's the thing: you had this Tom King run, very polarizing, I would say, and then it ended somewhat abruptly. It just immediately shot into Joker War and this other stuff, and then this series was supposed to kind of follow it pretty quickly, but then there were some art delays in order to get it right, and then there was the pandemic. Has the time just passed on this book, or is it? Do you think DC is still expecting this is going to be a massive hit, or it's just coming out?
I think the time's passed. I don't know what the orders are going to be. I can't imagine this hitting anything close to what it was hitting on his Batman.
Yeah, I have to feel like the fire is burned down.
I feel like this is going to do like Mr. Miracle numbers.
Yeah.
It's not going to do every other week Batman over 100K for most of that run. Like maybe this first issue will break 100K, but it'll probably settle around 50, 60.
I can't imagine it does as well. I think you've got a couple interesting things on here. You have this, you have the MODOK Head Games. So I think that's written by Patton Oswalt, I believe, or he's involved somehow, or it's tied into the show, or maybe the show is promoting the book. I don't know. I think
that's that guy. He was like the friend in King of Queens, right? That guy.
I don't really know. I don't pay attention.
They're letting him write comics. That's cute.
Yeah, it's nice.
It's nice.
How about The Union, which was this title was solicited to be, as somebody put in here, it's Drive. I find it hilarious. So The Union. It's Doc. Hey, Doc.
Hey, Doc.
It was supposed to be an Empire book, and then the pandemic hits. It gets kind of cut. And they're soliciting it again, but now it's a King in Black book. It's a new series that just sits with an event. They didn't even change a lot of the art from the look of things on the cover. But
they don't do that though. I know for a fact there have been times where there have been books that were supposed to be tied into one thing, tied into another. They won't pay to change the art, but they will, have someone go back and rewrite stuff to make it fit somehow.
Yeah, you can get the squiggly plant things, and you can just color them all black. You can just ink them over, and then they're symbiotes.
Yeah, that's like, I'm not being cynical. This is a thing that happens. Like, they do this.
Just a little bit of ink, it'll be fine.
So yeah, that's probably like, well, we already paid for it, so let's get it out there.
Yeah, vines and things attacking can become like black tendrils pretty easily.
Yeah, there's people are constantly being attacked by plants or symbiotes or whatever.
Yeah, it happens all the time.
Absolutely.
We get Wonder Women of History out, which has a odd list of the women. There's some really notable ones that are missing off that list, and some really contemporary ones. It's kind of a weird list.
Yeah, You know, I know a bunch of people that worked on that book. It's a nice thing to see DC. I think in part of being a more like global company and trying to hit different demographics, I think doing these kind of books makes sense. You want to attract that like library audience, and you want to get like educators and things like that looking at comics, and that's the kind of thing you want to do.
Yep.
You know, there's people I probably would have liked to have seen, you know, like maybe like, I don't know, Catherine the Great.
Sure.
Like, you know, there's a lot of women, like I don't have the, obviously I don't have the list in front of me, but there were like some really like striking omissions in that, you know, and again, like I feel like this is the kind of book they put together with like, well, who do you want to write, and asking these different people and
Right.
who are involved in the book, and be like, oh, I'd like to do a story on like Ruth Bader Ginsburg, or a story on this person, and the chips kind of fell that way, and they just went with it. That's probably
That makes
what ended up happening. Yeah, but yeah, it was like, there's, what was it? They did like Elizabeth Warren, like AOC, like some people where it's like, we don't know where some of these people are going to stand in history, but we have very solid evidence that people are still going to remember, you know, like Catherine the Great.
Yeah.
You
No,
know,
you know, Amelia Earhart, no, but some current senators. I mean, again, it just seems a little weird. It's very much for today in this audience, but you know, whatever you want to do.
Yeah, but I mean, Amelia Earhart, they didn't even bother finding her when she was alive.
That's true. They don't really care.
So who
The
cares?
patriarchy is screwing her there. So
yeah.
At the airline union, the Justice League Endless Winter #1. That's another event. Well, we'll get to all this. So I will tell everybody. So I did do an interview with Kari Andrews that's going to come up here in the next between now and Wednesday. It'll definitely be out before Wednesday, because he's got a book called Erratic, and it's by AWA, and it's a very good book. Like I promise, I read through it, and it's very different. It's a very good book. Not what you expected. I was really quite surprised at the quality of that book. So that's something I would look for.
Nice.
Do you hear a lot of like AWA? It had the amazing timing of launching right as a pandemic started with a title that was about a pandemic.
Yeah, that was a bad idea. I mean, I've been to the AWA offices. I know people that work there. I've talked to Bill on the phone a few times. I mean, like, it's, you know, it's I'm glad that Upshot, I think, was the imprint from AWA that Erratic's part of. So you know, congrats to Bill for getting something out.
Yeah.
You know, but yeah, it's interesting. It's a lot of you know, there's a lot of that older generation type of look into putting this company together in a way that, like, some of it'll resonate, some of it I'm not sure. I don't know, and this isn't a knock to you know, Jason the Wheeled Warriors writer James Straczynski. But you know, like having him like roll out like leading a title, it's like, do people care in 2020 in the same way that they would have like 20 years ago?
Yeah, it's hard to say. It's interesting because the titles that have come out from that company, I would say by and large are pretty good. They're not bad books. I've enjoyed much of what they've done, but
Sure.
the marketing and the way they've been putting them out is very, I would say, traditional.
Yeah.
And it's like, I think the world has changed, and then I think in addition to that, the world radically changed this year. And
Yeah.
it's almost like next year they need to do a do-over of kind of they need to do a do-over of the pitch, because they've actually created some good content, but it's you know, it's lost right now, and they've got to get people's attention again. But I don't think you can do that in the traditional comics way.
Sure. They're lost in the shuffle a bit. I think Bill is a very, you know, sort of cunning person, is the type of person who is actively thinking about different markets to break into. You know, we'll see what they end up doing. If they end up coming up with a strategy to break out of, you know, conventional means and the direct market, I think it's going to be Bill in that office who's going to figure that out. And yeah, I mean, it's tough. It is very tough with all of the competition right now, especially, I mean, they've got like guys they know, like Mike Martz, pushing really hard and putting out some really good stuff at Aftershock. I mean, like, I saw that Wes was talking about We Live, and I ended up reading the first 2 issues of that, and I thought that was really solid.
Yeah, it's a good book.
Yeah, but and I've read a bunch of other Aftershock books, and different things they've been doing over there. It's tough. Like these guys from Marvel in like the early mid 2000s, all trying to do different things, but Bill is going to be the one to push to diversify things. Bill's going to be the one pushing to get comics on different platforms. He put some of the Upshot books on Webtoons.
Yeah.
Like things like that. Like he's at least thinking in those terms.
You got to find new places. I think if you go head to head, I think there was a video I did earlier today. If you go head to head with Marvel or DC, the deck is so stacked against you. Like you're playing their game, and they're not even that great at playing their game. But you have no hope of playing that game. So I think it is interesting how it all comes along. And then meanwhile, quietly through all this, One Piece moves volume 95 out. So
yeah, I mean, you can't get the big 2 usually going and putting out something that goes beyond like volume 6 or 7 half the time, unless they have to.
Yeah,
the
One Piece omnibus is going to be ludicrous. It's just going to be a computer they hand you.
Oh yeah, like no, it's nuts. Some of these go like I was also thinking, like, why don't they put like Mark Grunwald's Captain America into omnibuses? But it would probably be at least 4 omnibuses if they did that.
Oh yeah, it would have to be.
You know?
It's no, it's crazy that anyway, this stuff all goes on. All right, we covered Joss Whedon. Hey, so we kind of got to this, but I wanted to lay it out this way as we close November and we start December. So Ten of Swords is over.
Yep.
Death Metal, Spider-Man Last Rites, Outlawed, still going. Mm-hmm. And then we are officially kicking off King in Black, Enter the Phoenix, and Endless Winter. 2 of those next week. King in Black and Endless Winter next week, and then I think Enter the Phoenix week after. Does this start to? It's just too much. It has to be too many events, right?
No, it is, and I'm not interested in literally any of it.
Yeah,
like I have no interest in reading a single one of those titles.
I can't. I mean, it's tough. Spider-Man just finished the Sins Rising, moving into Last Rites. That was really just one big long storyline with a bunch of crossovers that came into it. Outlawed is confusing to me. What exactly they're doing there? Is it just going to be kind of an imprint that's going to happen for a year or more? I don't know. But to throw then King in Black and Enter the Phoenix, and then Endless Winter is just a month-long event. It just feels like it's a trap, because if the reader doesn't kind of dive into one of these events pretty much at the beginning, then they're just out for 4 months or however long it takes.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. And I feel like a lot of people prefer just a good story from like one of their books. Like when you look at books that were consistently selling high, it was like Batman, Immortal Hulk, like books that weren't event extravaganzas. They were their own thing.
It's I know, I agree, and I think and to the point, yes, Last Rites, Enter the Phoenix, they're inter-company storylines. Both titles though are adding new books to the mix. It's not like they're just like in Spider-Man, you had Spider-Man 51 and Spider-Man 51.LR, so they find a way to cram another 8 books into the mix. And the same thing is happening with the Enter the Phoenix storyline. It's hard to say. I mean, is it an an inter-title storyline, but with bonuses? I don't know, but it is tough.
Yeah, and it sucks. I mean, it sucks because nothing changes after this, because you can't. they're not allowing themselves to have a new normal because the next event has to start right away.
Yeah, it's just one right after. I was surprised. I mean, we knew this for months ago, but I was surprised that Ten of Swords just ends, and King in Black the next week. I mean, I know they're different universes, different teams, but it's like you just finished one and you're moving right into another. I'm amazed they're sandwiched that close together.
But, yeah, and to Yule's point about Fall of Mutants, the really something interesting I discovered about Fall of Mutants not terribly long ago is Louise Simonson kind of ended up bullshitting Jim Shooter about it. Because she ended up just being like, because if Mutant Massacre was successful, which it was, Jim was just going to make them keep doing events.
Right.
So Easy was just like, oh, don't worry, Jim. Like, we already figured out the next event. Because she knew if she didn't say that Jim was going to kind of dictate what the next event would be. And then she used that time to kind of figure out what the hell they were going to do.
The old "don't worry about it, look at this hand over here" kind of trick.
And it turns out, like, I think we both agree that Fall of Mutants was like the stronger event and probably one of the strongest events in X history.
For sure.
But yeah, it's interesting that it came up with the like, oh, don't worry, we got it all figured out.
Yeah. It's always a good trick. You fake it till you make it, I think.
Exactly. But that's an example where it worked.
Yeah.
Like Mutant Massacre was a bit all like, maybe all over the place isn't the word, but it didn't have that event feel. It was mostly people getting murdered and butchered for a few issues. But
it was weird to see. Mutant Massacre didn't feel like an event. It kind of became that later as they did collections and other things, and it was different. But King in Black, and I'm not bagging on King in Black too much, although I guess I kind of am. So by current count, we're at 59 books. And it's going to wind up somewhere. We don't know kind of the final wrap up of books, but it's estimated to be about 68, roughly under 70. And we can kind of assume it's going to be about 285, a little hair under $300.
Yeah.
For King in Black. Do people have the money to go all in on this? And would anyone go all in on this?
Do they have the money? Do they have the time? I mean, 59 issues to read. I mean, the other thing is care. Who the hell cares about this?
Certainly at this level. I mean, I get a lot of people are going to read King in Black 1 through 5, and
that's different.
They may read Venom because they're reading Venom already. But if you're like, are you picking up King in Black, Wiccan and Hulkling #1, or King in Black Namor 1 through 5, which is a prequel flashback kind of story, or do you need the King in Black handbook #1? Do you need? I mean, it's hard to. I mean, it's just when you see the numbers laid out this way, it makes me wonder if anybody at the publisher is putting like this screen up on the board and going, "Hey guys, this is what we're doing. We're doing this 60 issue crossover. Exciting, right? This is what we want to do with our company." I mean, I wonder, do you think anyone frames it up this way? And I ask because recently I discovered that a lot of the people at the publishers had never really thought about the drop between the first issue to the second issue and whether that was good or not.
Yeah, no, that's it's concerning. But no, it makes you wonder if anyone's thinking at all, because they're so busy constantly moving all the parts that they're not taking the time to step back and be like, oh no, this is bad.
Yeah, I mean, for some people, I mean, Mateus in the chat is mentioning he's got all these titles on the pull list, and if this is something that's exciting to you, this is good news because you're getting a lot of something you want. It's hard for me to wrap my head around this as a marketing strategy, and what invariably happens is you go to the store and you see the majority of all these crossover issues on the shelf dying there.
Yeah, I mean, you see that. One of the bigger things too is just the confusing reading order.
Yeah.
it turns people off. They're like, I don't know which one. Where does Captain America #1 go compared to Immortal Hulk #1 and Iron Man like, where do these go in my reading order? And it just makes people go, forget it.
Yeah, I agreed. And the tie-ins often span weird times. I remember having this conversation with an editor years ago that, if you really do this right in an omnibus, you'd be like clipping pages from issues and then sprinkling them all over the place to get one coherent story, but nobody would do that. I remember the argument given is like, nobody would do that because then the art would be real jumbled and all over the place. And then, today that's a strategy apparently. But
yeah,
I don't know. It's a lot of comics. And, at least from what I've heard from Marvel is 2021 is going to have a lot more of this kind of, big tentpole events, 4 of them, everything ties into it. On you go.
You could buy like a 40-inch flat screen TV for the amount of money you're dropping on.
Don't do the math that way.
Like you could be dropping, you could be buying a new gaming console. You could buy like 7, like what was it? You could, for that much money, you could buy like 4 games, like easy.
Yeah, I could buy a lot of whiskey for that cost.
Oh yeah, like top shelf stuff. You could buy like the amount of stuff you could buy for that money. It's crazy. And then you look at that and you go like, well, they'll probably put a giant omnibus together that'll be like $150, and I'll just wait for that.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people will. But I also feel like the people who come to that conclusion, like, I don't need to buy this, I'll just wait for the omnibus, they don't actually ever wait for the omnibus. They just, like, because the events are happening in such speed. When the omnibus does come out a year later or whenever it happens to be, they're Marvel's busy promoting the next event. You're going like, well, maybe I'll buy that one later, and you never actually ever come back to it.
Well, also because it can't be consequential because you're going right into another event after this.
Yeah,
they don't understand. You need time to breathe. You need time to feel the consequences of an event, but we don't get that anymore.
And maybe that's the biggest part. Is I think the events, and this is what I think made the X events work so well in the early 90s, is there was breathing room between the big moments. There was setup that could happen. There was consequences that could start to get piled up. But when you're going just event to event to event, it's like, I don't know, Iron Man did some stuff in Empire, and now he's going to do some stuff in King of Black, and there's no consequences. There's no breathing room. It doesn't really matter.
Yeah, absolutely.
I don't know. On a different topic here, I got this impression as well. You read through Ten of Swords. They introduced these new characters. Some of these new characters felt really fleshed out, for lack of a better word, like especially these 3 in particular.
Sure.
But I can't get to, like, it felt like they were putting a lot of love to, say, White Sword and establishing that character. Do we see that character again, or does that, like, was this just done for the event and they're gone? We're getting more Bay the Blood Moon because we're going to get the whole couple thing going, but
yeah,
like, do you get the feeling like these characters are just going to kind of get tossed away now, or do you think they'll do something with them?
My fear is that they'll do something, but they'll just add instead of keeping a tight line.
Yeah.
Because now that, Rocco's going to be like part of like Krakoa and all of that, like, we're going to see, like, now they'll probably do something like, we're going to start 4 new Rocco mutant books, like on top of the, already existing, X books, and we're not going to cancel any of those. It's like, we don't need that. Like, we need a tighter line.
Yeah, I agree. There's a lot of X books in that line.
And I'm not saying not to do like a book with maybe some of these Rocco characters if you want to develop them, and if there's a fan interest in that, that's good. But like, you could do that in one book, and you can like cancel or consolidate other books to make room instead of just bloating the line.
Yeah. I don't know how anyone really starts to stand out. I mean, I feel like the problem with the X books already and getting everybody on the island is there's a lot of interesting characters on there that we don't get to see because you've got all these. It's just too much.
But that goes back to this is an MMORPG.
Yeah.
There is too much, but it's by design because you live in this world and you want to explore everything. It's the world building above narrative, and that's where we're at with this X line.
Yeah, it's a lot. Hey, so here's a question for you if you want to dive into it. So the Dan Slott documentary, which has been the talk of comics for a week now, what was your take on it?
I had talked about this with with Wes on Thinking Critical a bit, but my biggest takeaway was, and I want people to be clear on this because apparently a lot of people didn't realize this. Stephen Wacker, who produced this, was Dan's editor on Spider-Man.
Right.
Like, he was there for Superior Spider-Man before all that too, with like Ends of the World and all that stuff. So Stephen Wacker knew Dan for a long time. They worked together, and was already familiar with everyone in the office. So what I think happened was Stephen Wacker was like, "Oh, well, let's do this thing," and it's like it's all jokey and inside stuff because they all know each other.
Yeah.
And a lot of people don't realize that their inside jokes and their fun they have with each other doesn't translate outside of that group.
Exactly. Yeah, they were definitely putting stuff on. Like, I mean, maybe, but I have a hard time believing that like Dan Slott is going to kind of nibble his way down the hallway and then bang maniacally on Brevort's window, and Brevort's going to kind of wonder what's going on and give a weird face. Like, I don't think that's normal human behavior. I think they were doing it for the show, but the question then becomes, well, it's to your point. Like, I think they thought they were going to be kind of funny and it was going to be a jokey look at Marvel.
Yeah.
But it didn't, somebody in the production truck, somebody somewhere in there should have gone like, hey, you're coming off like an asshole. And maybe when we flip to some of these other shots of the other members of the creative team looking like they're having a terrible life, that's not going to be as funny as you think. It's just going to, it's going to make you look bad. Like, let me protect you from yourself. Don't do this.
Yeah. I mean, there was a lot of misfires here. Also picking Iron Man 2020. Why?
Yeah. Why remind anyone of that event?
Don't remind people of that. Like, don't pick something that you don't know isn't already going to be a success. Do a retrospective of something. Like, this was a great opportunity to talk about all of Dan's successes with Spider-Man and act like Dan didn't do anything else.
Yeah, exactly. Like, it is puzzling. Like, why wouldn't you? Yeah, they should have done this for Spider-Man. Doing the Iron Man, because the tension of we've got to get this book out could have been for anything. And if you were already kind of making it all up, you could have, said, this was back when we were doing the last issue of Slott on Spider-Man. It doesn't matter. Nobody cares.
Yeah, and it wasn't about the Marvel method.
Right.
That was the really confusing thing. It's like, why even bother calling this the Marvel method? What they should have done is like a look back at, modern Spider-Man or something with Dan Slott, and like talk about how Dan Slott's the writer of Spider-Man for a generation, and you interview kids and parents and people who are like, Dan Slott's my, that's my Spider-Man. Like, do something like that. Get people excited about Spider-Man. Get people that are on Disney Plus that don't read comics that look at that documentary and go like, oh, I guess Dan Slott's a good place for me to start Spider-Man or something like that.
Yeah, why not? Actually, the perfect story for them probably would have been, it's Dan Slott's final issue of Spider-Man. He wants to stick the landing. He wants to, there's a lot of pressure and everything. And like, why not go that direction?
Yeah.
You could go all into this celebrated run. He made, because that run did make a lot of money. It's good. You wouldn't, it all would have, and then the conflict could have been Dan, like, I don't know how to end this thing I've been on forever. And then that would have translated to kind of this hopeful story that would have worked, as opposed to, I'm on Iron Man, I'm on a storyline. Like you said, most people either had no idea this was going on and didn't care, or they actually read this event and it was absolutely terrible. And it sold terribly. Like, it was a no-win situation for anyone.
Yeah, but people like with Disney Plus are like, oh, Iron Man, you mean like Tony Stark, and it's like Arno Stark, and they're like, what the fuck is he talking about?
Sure. No, exactly.
About gears? What the fuck?
They're talking about gears and super intelligent cats, and like it's like none of this makes any sense to the thing, 3 inches up on the screen that is, in game. Like that is what are you doing?
It's like or do something like, Empire, where at least maybe that translates. Maybe someone would be like, oh, it looks like all my favorite Marvel characters are fighting an alien invasion. That's similar to things I've seen on TV. I could pick that up.
Sure.
Like literally almost anything else would have been better.
It's a case where going back to the Green Goblin would have been a good plan.
Yeah. It was just truly baffling. And I don't know why they did it. It was weird.
The puzzling part to me is that Disney is well, I don't know about very well known, but fairly well known about wanting to protect their brand. And they do have people who look at these things and go, hey, don't do this to yourself. This is gonna be bad for you. Don't do it.
Yeah.
And in this one, they just like, nah, screw it. I can't tell if it's just nobody cares about comics. It's just too small a thing for them to worry about, so they don't bother.
Yeah.
Or again, if somebody's like, this makes him look like an asshole, but hey, it's not me. Fuck it. Put it out.
Yeah, I mean, and I think we talked about this a bit before. I think you had mentioned, it was probably like Disney being like, oh, it's just like how did we make this thing? That's a cut and dry, non-controversial thing. You're just telling people how you make it, not realizing how Marvel operates.
Yeah, absolutely. It's I also think I don't know. It's interesting to see reaction, and then it's also a lesson in how not to react when you fucked up. So it's watching kind of Dan and the other people now very angrily defend themselves. It's weird. First of all, they're punching everything because you've got fans going, "Hey, this is embarrassing for you." Because I hate Dan Slott, and this gives me more reasons to hate him. There's creators who are looking at this going, hey, I don't like to, be waiting on pages 2 days before printing. Screw you. And there's a decent contingent of people. I mean, Alice Cott, there's a lot of people who kind of weighed in saying, this guy's an ass.
Yeah.
So it's never good when you have it hits coming from every different direction. And that's, I don't know. It was an easily avoidable mistake.
Yeah, it was, it was a forced error in a way that was just like, why? Why are you doing this?
Yeah,
I agree. At the same time as the Franklin Richards retcon issue.
Right. Yeah, which is the previous week's mess. It is, I don't know. You never want to make a mistake that you can avoid. And so you don't want to get to this place where the best you kind of hope for is that everybody kind of forget about it and life will move on. And that's what you hope for. It is, I think, as Horizon Brave is saying, it is blown out of proportion just to some extent. But it also, I don't know, I guess it depends on your angle here. It is, because it was an avoidable mistake, it makes it kind of all the stupider, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, I mean, it was blown out of proportion. People, coming up with like conspiracy theories on how this is secretly like a hatchet job and stuff like that. That implies a lot more competence was involved.
That is true.
But yeah, like the part of why it's blown out of proportion is like up until like I think even like yesterday, Dan was still tweeting about it.
Yeah.
He could
just shut up. It would have been over.
It's like you do one tweet, you just go like, "Hey, I'm seeing some mixed reactions. Just want to let everyone know it was a jokey time. Me and everyone I work with, Christos Gage, Pete Woods, Joe Corallo, we're all cool. We're all a tight unit. We were just goofing on each other. Don't worry about it. Don't concern troll us. We're all fine." And just drop it.
This is why I think these big companies need a PR person or a social media handler or somebody, because that would have been the perfect advice. Put that out there, just write it. It's over. Have maybe the other members go, yeah, we're all good. We play this for a laugh. Sorry if you weren't entertained, but maybe next time.
Yeah.
But yeah, even, I mean, yesterday he was still throwing punches. He was still going at it. And unfortunately, it's that he was throwing punches to a lot of people who are fellow creators in the industry who are looking at this going, what the hell, man? So
Yeah.
Anyway, all crazy. Hey, here's something else to kind of look over. And I'm doing some deep dive in numbers because it's, I can be a numbers geek at times.
Sure.
And this is November 2019 versus 1999. So a 20-year time span. I like these kind of interesting comparisons of the top 20 comics. Well, I guess 19. I don't know where number 20 went. I don't know. Yeah, see, this is why I'm also not detail oriented. But you look at 2019, and I'm making this bigger kind of video and point that we have way too many number one issues. And it is worse than I thought, because I pulled a bunch of numbers. I started going through it. I'm like, well, this number is inflated because of reprints and all the rest. And then I'm like, I took those out, and it's like, oh no, it's still 25 to 35% of the line over the last year in 2019 were number one issues, which is insane.
Yeah.
I don't, and they're more expensive as people are seeing this thing. It is. I remember the happy, 20 years ago, Tomb Raider was your number one comic. I guess 21 years ago. That's weird to kind of wrap your head around as well. But
yeah, no, that was Tomb Raiding was big. I think that's the year that the Brendan Fraser Mummy movie came out.
Oh yeah, that's right.
We as a society doubled down on Tomb Raiding. That was what everyone was talking about. Like, you're raiding tombs, like Tomb Raiding's the shit, But,
absolutely.
And that, and everyone making jokes about, like, I saw American Beauty, a bag in the wind. Like that was.
Oh God, I guess to do this really right, I should pull up the pop culture things that were going on back then as well.
Yeah, no, people were making jokes about that. I think Scream 2 maybe came out by then. What a time to be alive! Phantom Menace.
Yeah, I get this. I get that feeling every time people are like, "Oh, we have to go back like 25 years." It's like, oh, but let's look at what was popular then.
Yeah.
Oops. It is. Yeah, and comics have pretty much doubled in price in 20 years.
Yeah.
It's also a little bit of a rough thing to kind of wrap your head around, but
that sounds like Bantha Poodoo to me, right?
Yeah, it is. Yeah. I don't know. It's a weird look at the industry, but the one part that is more interesting, because people talk about units sold, and the one thing that is actually fairly consistent, as you'll notice, is the amount of units sold, number one to across the years, were pretty close. It was not much different.
Yeah.
And I think there is this perception sometimes that comics have cratered a little bit with the units sold, and it's actually, as I've run the numbers now over the past 30 years or so, it really doesn't change as much as you think. It lines up about the same. Once the newsstand got out of it, it looked a lot like this.
Oh, was Earth X Jim Kruger? Didn't he write that?
Maybe.
I feel like, because that was that Marvel book, right?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah, I think that was Jim Kruger.
Okay. I
got margaritas with Jim Kruger once.
Were they good?
They were fine, but it was a weird conversation. It devolved into, at one point, Jim, just out of the fucking blue, just goes like, I didn't know until I moved to LA that, like, girls, like, bleach their down. Yeah.
Okay.
And I'm just like, oh wow, this is hi Jim, this is a weird conversation to be having with you, but
that's a good opener.
It is a good opener, buy Jim Kruger books is where this is going, I guess.
That's a bit for another time. We can put up quotes we've heard over the years, and it can be like, guess who said it?
Yeah, and then there's like creators I've gone to, like, to see strip shows with that, like, they don't say anything, but I know how you do that game. But
the good times. Yeah, I'm trying to think of the creator. I had an artist tell me once that if you're going to go to a strip joint, always go to the one by the airport, because the people there's no chance you're going to run into anybody So you head there. It's like pro tip. You go to the strip clubs by the airport. I'm like, oh, okay. That
sounds like something like James Robinson would say.
Yeah. Anyway, okay. So as we just kind of answer some questions from the chat, so just basic. I pulled the comics from years past. This week was New Mutants #1 from the original #1, not just the one last year. So that's fun to kind of see up there.
Bob McLeod art?
Yeah, I believe so.
Yeah,
that's some nice stuff. It is. People, we gave people some good advice in the chat there. There you go. This is why you come to the channel. See, you learn these things.
Exactly. You get an insider perspective. Although now, considering what we were just talking about, I probably shouldn't phrase it that way. But you know what?
Yeah.
You know what I mean.
But yeah, I don't know if that holds up in New York back east, but definitely on the West Coast. You go to the joints by the airport. And that's
yeah.
Yeah,
exactly.
They're usually under freeways. It's weird.
Ooh.
Yeah, it's classy all the way around. Oh, so what are you as we're closing out this year? I guess we got another month. I mean, who knows? We've been in this year for roughly 50 years. Is there anything you're looking forward to next year? Is there a comic or a project or something that you think is really going to be what you want to pay attention to?
No, I mean, geez, like outside of my own projects that are launching next year. But
I can't believe they're letting you get away with those.
I can't believe I'm getting away with this too. But I don't know how much I'm looking forward to. Like now that I've read We Live, I'm interested in to see what Aftershock has for next year.
Mm-hmm.
I'm always interested to see where Vault's going. They seem to be going more in a horror direction.
Yeah, absolutely.
Which I like. So I'm interested to see that. I'm interested to see if Black Mask is gonna launch any new projects or if they're just gonna keep like sort of just reprinting the stuff they have.
It's been a while, hasn't it? Or, I mean, like how long has it been now?
I don't think they put anything original out this year. I think it's mostly been reprints this year. A couple of collections might have come out of stuff that like never actually came out, but they put the graphic novel out.
Yeah.
But I think their last like new material was like probably 2019. I mean, I know for a fact I edited something that came out in 2019. So
it is there's a lot of MIA books still out there. I guess Valiant's starting to get things out again finally. I don't know. It feels like the industry is just kind of hoping for a do-over, but they're also hoping that the distribution channels don't get shut down again in the next 2 weeks or so. And
I mean, there's that. I'm interested to see what some of the things that Archie will do. If they're going to keep expanding this like horror version of Archie they've been doing, especially now that like I think Sabrina's over. I think that was the last season on Netflix, and I feel like Riverdale's probably winding down. So it's going to be interesting to see kind of where Archie goes from here. I feel like Boom is one of the places to really watch and see what's going to happen. What they end up doing if they acquire new licenses, if they like really get some interesting new IP from someone that isn't like Kieran Gillen or James Tynan.
Mm-hmm.
So that'll be interesting. I think for a lot of people too, like all eyes are on places like Dark Horse and IDW. Like, what are you guys doing?
I mean, it's and again, it's all, I think, people biding their times until the world kind of comes back into focus a little bit. But it does feel like we're in for a very different landscape here in the early part of the year. I think DC, from what I understand, we're supposed to get some news out of DC next Thursday. So I think we're 6 days away from starting to see new creative teams in March.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's something to pay attention to. It feels like Marvel, there's not a lot of new that's going to happen there. Just, I guess we look forward to whatever the event is that's coming after King in Black and X-Men. But there's something a little bit to watch with DC, but I agree. I think the stuff to really pay attention to is what's IDW, Boom, Dark Horse, Vault, Aftershock. What are these companies going to do, and how are they going to differentiate? I would like to see AWA get a new shot at the world. They need a do-over. So what does that look like?
Yeah, they're going to have to refresh with some new books launching next year.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously, again, a certain level of bias, but like TKO, it's going to be interesting to see what their fourth round of books is going to be.
Yeah, there's a lot of opportunity out there, or will they all do like 8,000 YA books?
Yeah, no, I mean the YA stuff is going to collapse soon. It has to, just by the very nature of the amount of stuff that's coming in. It's going to have to recalibrate.
There's too much. Yeah, I mean, it's been interesting to watch. This is very anecdotal. It doesn't really mean anything, but I take a regular trip to the local Barnes and Noble and I look at what they're putting where, and you see how it's always really noticeable when they add shelves and remove shelves, because they have to do like at a block at a time. And what keeps happening, what's happened over the last year pretty heavily, is that the Western comics graphic novels, the Marvel DC area, has just shrunk. It's just lost shelves every couple months.
Yeah.
And the YA grew, but then this last week, I noticed they lost a shelf. So that's starting to shrink back slightly. And then manga is just like, I don't know if they bought just a stuff that fell off a boat or what, but it's like there is an insane amount of that area just grows with no end in sight.
Yeah, and I mean, you've talked about this before, but there is a little bit going on there too with manga that the costs are different because you're paying for the translation, but the art's already like done. Those artists are paid already,
right? So
like the cost of these books is lower than some other books, so that does factor into it.
It does. That's true, and I think cost is a factor, and people are definitely worrying about all that. By the way, for everybody who's joined us and people who come in, I always put up the live chat and everything, and it'll be up for view later. But thanks everybody for joining us. And if you don't mind liking the video, that's always nice if you feel like it. I always hate when people tell me that. I always feel like I'm going to downvote this deliberately because you can't tell me what to do. But that's just my personality, I guess. I don't know. I'm insane.
Fair.
Yeah. Well, cool. So let's flip over to DC here for a minute. See if any of these. See if you remember any of these here. I guess next year we're getting a lot out of Guy Gardner is the rumor that he's going to have a lot more going on, and
sure,
booster gold, sure.
Something interesting. Since this is pulled up, seeing like Batman: The Outsiders, something I don't think a lot of people know, especially more recent readers, is Batman sales fucking sucked for years.
They did, especially in the late 70s when the implosion happened. We've talked about this before. That title was right on the cutting block.
Yeah, they were going to cancel Detective, and they had to like intervene to prevent that from happening. But part of it was Legion of Superheroes and Teen Titans. I think Teen Titans was number 1, and Legion of Superheroes were number 2 in sales.
Right.
But they were annihilating Batman and Superman. Yeah. They weren't close. Like Batman was doing terribly.
I'm going to pull some of these numbers for like the next time you join me on one of these live streams. I'll get some plan because I've got these numbers, and it is amazing to watch how I mean, Teen Titans, Legion of Superheroes were incredibly dominant during this time. And it's like some people have asked, why does DC keep mucking about with Legion of Superheroes? Well, it was a huge seller for a very long time. And I still maintain, and I think we'll probably hit it in some of this retrospective, there's so much IP to mine. Like if you could just get your shit together on that book, it could be, I mean, that's in the weirdest way, that could be your Game of Thrones over on HBO where DC is concerned. You could do so much with it.
No, there's a lot to do with Legion, and you know, especially like the Paul Levitt stuff. Like once you get into like the Bronze Age and like a little before Crisis, I mean, the Great Darkness Saga it is,
Mhm.
you know, it might not be quite as good as the Dark Phoenix Saga, but it is up there.
Yeah.
It is a really solid story. And same thing with Judas Contract at Teen Titans. I mean that first few years of New Teen Titans rivals a lot of what Claremont was doing.
It's true. No, it is a really good book. It is pretty accessible to get into, and yeah, it was selling. I mean, that was what was leading a lot of DC's sales at the time. It was. I mean, there's a lot of good work there. I still maintain if you're trying to get shows done for HBO Max and you want to put some stuff out there, just go back, go to Legion of Superheroes, start putting that all together, cast well, and just commit to 8 seasons or whatever you're going to do, and start putting that out. I think you'd be printing money. I think it'd be very easy to do.
Yeah, but to go back to the original point,
Oh yeah, sorry.
Batman and the Outsiders was created because team books were selling. Batman wasn't selling, and they needed to give Batman a team so people would care about Batman.
That's true. It's weird to think about that today.
Yeah.
But that was absolutely what was going on, and there was, as I recall too, that team was somewhat of a committee choice of a team. They were trying to find the perfect kind of mix of team to to kind of to really they were, I don't know, I'm now speaking about something I'm more or less forgetting, but there was this whole background around this team was selected to try and appeal to every category all simultaneously, but it was definitely a way to kind of get interest into Batman. And then you had Alan Davis on that book too. I just noticed that was awesome.
Yeah, but like, I mean, for people to understand this, Teen Titans and Legion of Superheroes were not cartoons, they didn't have movies, and they were outselling Superman, which was actively currently having a movie franchise with Christopher Reeves.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it was no contest. They were destroying Superman.
Yeah. No, I don't know. It's weird. Well, I mean, times change, and I think we're headed for that change now again.
We are. I think some of the problems that came about, like one of the big problems that happened with Legion of Superheroes, was they sabotaged their own top seller to try to get Superman and Batman selling better.
Yeah,
and yeah, it's awful.
I mean, there's similar things they do today, I think.
Yeah, I mean, can you believe Marvel was stupid enough to kill Wolverine for like a while?
Yeah. Yeah.
Like here's the thing too. A lot of people talk about All New, All Different being this like awful time in Marvel, and like the diversity was the issue. It's not diversity. They killed fucking Wolverine.
Yeah. No, and they deprioritized. Yeah, absolutely. Wolverine was one of their core characters. They kill him off. And what was interesting is the message gets out that, hey, we want to, not have the important things be out there for Fox. And then they put in Laura as Wolverine, and then they try and want you to care about that. But they've already admitted that they're trying to deprioritize the X-Men. So, I mean, just think about how that comes across. It's like, hey, here's this other character. We want you to care about that, but we don't care about the X-Men. So, I mean, clearly these are it's just like I'm not even, it's not even making sense talking it back because it's so fucking stupid.
Yes.
I don't get it. I really,
yeah. But no, people always skirt over like, like, oh, it's all about diversity and pushing Miss Marvel. Oh, by the way, they also killed off Wolverine for years. But, and it's like, no.
Yeah. You killed off your flagship character for a long time. And what were they doing with Spider-Man at the time? Weren't they dicking around with him as well?
I mean, yeah, like Spider-Man at the time, that was like post-Superior Spider-Man, but before Red Goblin, and no one cared.
Yeah, that was what he was, a tech mogul at that point or something.
He was a tech mogul who was about to like lose everything, and then he lost everything. Like, it was stupid.
Dating Mockingbird, as I recall.
He was like sleeping on like Mockingbird's couch at one point or something. It was weird.
Oh, that's right. Yeah. Well, yeah, he was. Yeah. That was fucking terrible. So you take your most notable characters and then you do weird shit with them. That was where you had Captain America aged up into an old man. You're like, okay, we're going to use this to pass the torch, but they don't pass the torch. They keep old man Captain America running around in a Captain America suit, but it's super weird.
Yeah, and then he was in Charles Soule's She-Hulk for a bit, and then they gave Charles Soule like a bunch of Inhumans books.
Yeah, there was so many bad decisions there, and it's no, that wasn't. I think the diversity thing that people key in on is definitely secondary to sabotaging all of your main fucking characters.
Yes. At the same time.
Yeah, it's absolutely crazy. Joe Corallo, everyone's favorite co-host. Well, absolutely.
Oh, thank you.
No doubt about it. Absolutely. You know what's also funny? I want to do this video too, but I guarantee I'm going to have a lot of people get pissy about it. But Black Panther, I'm not making this up. You can go through his covers, and he has like the tagline "At last, T'Challa fights the Klan," like on 20 books. Like they're always promoting he's going to fight the Klan for the first time, but they do it over and over and over. And then they also dress the Klan up in weird colored costumes as well. Anyway.
Yeah. I mean, the first time he fought the Klan, the whole part was they told Don McGregor that they needed to add more white people to the book.
Right.
And I think Rich Buckler was the illustrator on this one, on this particular story. He illustrated a bunch of stuff with Don McGregor. But so like Don McGregor's like tongue-in-cheek way to apply Marvel's notes was like, oh, you want me to add more white people? I'm going to have them fight the Klan. Ha ha ha. Like that kind of thing.
I gotcha.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it was. These are weird books, and I've wanted to review them, but they're. I mean, the algorithm's all wrong, and I mean, it's always a dodgy subject to get in all this, but they're not often the Klan. Like at one issue, it's like weird aliens who are a religious sect, and it's like it is. None of this makes any sense. It's weird.
I mean, like, this is the. One of the things that I think some people forget about or don't necessarily know are that these were topics that Marvel was dealing with from, like the Silver Age. I mean, the hate monger, I think, was an early Fantastic Four issue, maybe 18, 19, 20, 21 in that area, which was basically his Klan-like character, but he turned out to be Hitler. You have that. And then you have this sort of stuff going on. And then you go over to like DC and like, people like Murray Boltinoff was actively engaging with freelancers who wanted to add more Black characters into their books in, 1970, 71, 72.
Yep.
These were conversations that were happening.
Yeah, no, for sure. I don't know. It is a but it's always, by the way, why did they use is that the KISS font for the Klan there? I don't know. These comics were always so awkward, and I know these conversations were going on in the background, but then the output was always bizarre in what they did.
Yeah. I will say, though, when I was talking about bad movies before, I have seen Casablanca more than Kiss meets Phantom of the Park. I will say that.
I'll have a drink on that.
Yeah.
Oh, no, the ice is melted. All right. This is a problem. I need to prepare these things more. I come out to the little studio here, and I do not have like an ice bucket and all that. Eventually I'll become the drunk I've always wanted to be.
Yeah, but do yourselves a favor and see Kiss Meets the Phantom of the Park. It's a bad movie, and you'll regret it immediately.
Yeah, is that on Netflix?
I don't think it's streaming anywhere.
That's unfortunate.
Why would Gene Simmons want it to stream anywhere?
I don't know. There's got to be some royalties out there somewhere.
Yeah.
By the way, is that the Star Wars crew and the Jawas running from the Sandcrawler right there? Is that, or no, or maybe that's backing them up? I can't tell what's going on. I know I had this comic, but And Chewbacca looks so weird there.
Those Star Wars comics are so weird.
Yeah, they had that green bunny character. Jackson, was it?
Yeah, like I don't know. Like this is interesting time. Yeah.
The Marriage of Starfire. How about that?
It's been a while since I read that, but yes.
There you go. And we had Batman in combat with Crazy Quilt.
Which issue of Detective is that?
That's Batman. That's
Batman. Yeah. Well,
Detective. Oh, no, it is Detective. All right. There you go. I don't know.
Is that 545?
It's fuck. This is an hour and a half in with this alcohol. This has become a memory contest now.
I think that I think it might be like this is right when this is the okay. I'm gonna rant a bit. That I believe is the first. It's not the first Jason Todd appearance, but it's the first Jason Todd as Robin fighting a character, and he loses to Crazy Quilt.
Okay.
And this is all like Doug Menk or Monch. I don't know how to pronounce his last name, but he was writing Detective at the time. That's probably 84, 85.
Yeah, makes sense.
And everyone knows like him writing stuff around, like Nightfall and stuff like that. And he's had some lengthy runs of Batman. He might have written more issues of Batman in the Bronze Age and forward than anyone else of like the actual Batman title.
Really?
Yeah, he wrote over 100 issues of Batman, like just him.
I had no idea. That actually surprises me quite a bit. I would have estimated he was around 40 issues, 50 issues or so, but
he wrote more than that before Crisis.
Oh, you're right. That time span does go there.
He wrote Batman for like at least 3 or so years, but he was doing like he wrote 40. It might have been 40 issues of Batman and 40 issues of Detective at the same time. And the way they wrote it at the time, Batman and Detective was like the same book. Because Jerry Conway started doing that on his run, and then Doug kept going with that.
I'm trying to find this issue as well. I think this is Detective Comics 535.
All right, I was close.
You were close, and it was, when was this? 1984.
All right, yeah.
So there you go.
Yeah, but
right in that window. Yeah.
He's one of the prominent people to write Batman, and everyone like forgot about him, and no one talks about him. And most of his stuff isn't really like almost none of his stuff is collected pre-Crisis. And I know you've talked about stuff where you have talked about how a lot of stuff isn't collected, and people have pushed back on you on that. A lot of stuff isn't collected. A lot of people don't know Doug wrote years of Batman before Crisis.
I mean, this is where I think if you just, and I know people roll their eyes when I say it's about digital, but this is where if you had a strategy and you could put something out like what Shonen Jump has, and you could throw these issues out, there's this whole lost archive of comics that is thousands and thousands of issues.
Yeah.
And it's going to be maybe problematic or hard for them to put them back into print. I mean, fuck that. It wouldn't be that hard. I mean, you could do that, but I mean, there's just a gold mine of content out there that I think would sell today. And it just needs the right packaging, the right presentation. And I think you could turn this around like crazy. I still don't know why they don't come out with a format where you do print on cheaper paper and you could put 5 or 6 comics into one larger collection comic, and you just start putting that, just start reprinting these things out there.
Yeah.
I don't know. It feels like there's a missing, but there's a ton of content. And really, I think the mid 70s to kind of the mid 80s feels like this decade where you've got, I don't know, what has to be tens of thousands of comics that are just kind of MIA.
Absolutely. And one of the victims of this is Carrie Bates.
Yeah.
A lot of people don't know Carrie Bates. You actually do know him because he wrote Gargoyles.
Right.
And I think a lot of people have seen the cartoon Gargoyles, but he wrote almost every single Bronze Age Flash issue, and almost none of it is collected.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, they're finally putting out like a hardcover, I think, next year of the death of Iris West.
Yeah.
And, you know, it's like, it's all this key stuff. You know, he wrote over 100 issues of Flash, and like everyone's like, who the hell's Carrie Bates?
Well, and I think these comics, they're not necessarily collector editions, meaning they're cheap if you can find them, but you'd have a hard time finding them. I don't mean cheap like dollar bin, but they're not going to be radically expensive.
Yeah.
But it is, I mean, I think a lot of that stuff would completely fit today's sensibilities. It would work if they could just get them out. I don't think this would be a bad thing. And I do think this is probably a way that you tap some level of new digital market. I think it's because it is going to be easier to get that content out faster that way. And you're not taking something away from somebody, or you're being additive to it. And I don't know, you get some cases where you could get people sharing stuff out like, hey, I read this issue. It's from the 80s. It's fun. I mean, why not? So
yeah, but God, like, well, I've been drinking, but you know, it's even like recent history, we forget stuff that just happened. Like everyone like talking about like Ghostmaker.
Yeah,
It's just nobody from Tomasi's New 52 run.
Yeah.
It's the same fucking character. It's like, oh, a guy who was there with Batman when he was training, and who's come into Gotham and is a different kind of vigilante. Same fucking thing less than 10 years ago.
I mean, just recently, you might have missed it. There was this this kind of shitty tarot-based event in X-Men, and you know, it just happened. You might have completely missed it, but it just happened.
Yeah, no, absolutely, and it's nonsensical. It doesn't make like, it's just like all the tarot stuff does is to make you think that Saturnine's a fucking idiot.
Yeah. She doesn't really sell that genius overlord role very well.
No, she does not.
But oh well, be that as may. I think this is the last grouping of comics I've got. This is the traditional Thanksgiving weekend, so there's less, and I think the just spinner rack over on Twitter puts these things out. It's a nice, easy, good follow. But no, some nice stuff. I like that Storm showing up in Spidey there. This was when they would use Storm to kind of show up to make it rain, and that's just what she kind of did.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah,
but
being assaulted by spinning gears.
Yeah, and that's that, like, that Fantastic Four is in like that like weird sort of like dead period, like before. I think that's before Marv Wolfman and then John Byrne, and it's like it's well after Stan and Roy Thomas. And
Fantastic Four were spinning their wheels at that point pretty badly.
Yeah,
I mean that was this is a lost era that nobody really cares about finding.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. Why would you want to?
Yeah, you do have. I think somebody in the chat mentioned this. I believe this is Frank Miller's second Daredevil run in here.
Is that during Born Again, or is that after? Because
I think this was after. I think
was he still on? Did he stay on after Born Again?
I thought he did a bit after, although I may have my timing wrong. But I thought this came after. It's weird, as this is a cover I don't immediately I remember, but it's I can't place it. I'm trying to do it by the Black Spider-Man logo. I'm like, okay, well, this was right around Secret Wars 2 time frame, and this is when there were 75 cents with the little M logo at the top. So I'm trying to do it that way. And Secret Wars 2 was post Born Again, right?
Yeah, no, I mean, this is a Frank Miller, David Mazzucchelli issue. Yeah. I'm just like, is this before or after? Is what I'm trying to think.
Yeah. I could swear this was after, but I may be completely crazy, and we haven't. Yeah, okay. So as somebody points out, that is Purgatory there at the bottom. So yeah. This is Born Again. So never mind. All right, I'm just a big idiot, is what's going on.
No, that's fine. But yeah, Born Again's great. If you read Daredevil, Born Again is probably better than the Daredevil run before he did Born Again. There's a lot of clunky stuff. It takes a bit for him to figure out what the hell he's doing.
Yeah.
And then once he figures it out, it's solid. But there's a lot of issues before he really figures it out. Like if you've read the run from the beginning, that's like, it's just an issue where he's fighting Doc Ock, or it's just an issue where he's fighting this guy, and it's. But Born Again is completely solid. And David Mazzucchelli,
Yep.
great guy. I've met him a bunch of times. He did an indie book, Asterius Polyp. It's really great. He's an artsy, like teaches at an art school in. I think he teaches at SVA. And okay. If you really want to impress David Mazzucchelli at a convention, or if you ever see him, tell him how much you love Asterius Polyp. That's what he wants to hear. He doesn't want to hear about Daredevil or Batman Year One. He wants to hear about Asterius Polyp. He'll sign that stuff, but he wants to hear about Asterius Polyp.
Yeah,
which is great. I love that book, but
it's
just heads up for all of you if you
have that.
If you ever meet him,
have that good moment someday when conventions are back in like 2024. That's what you want to do.
Yeah.
Do you think that Marvel and DC should bring back the concept of easy reading comics for kids? Like, do you think that would be helpful?
It's tough because, like, I feel like in a way, like so much of the problem is marketing, because they have these comics like what was it like I think like Franco and like Art Balthazar or something would do these like Super Pets comics and these like more like kid-oriented comics.
IDW's line is very much in that vein.
Yeah, well. Like they have them out there, but I think they're just bad at letting people know.
It's weird that we see a lot of the comic publishers, in particular the big two, talking about needing to reach a new market and wanting to get new customers and all the rest. But then their channel is the same old place it's always been. They're still sending them to the comic shop, which has an established clientele. It's not like I just wonder, are they thinking that if they produce a comic that's aimed at a certain demographic, that demographic is going to somehow know that that's happening and then go to a comic shop for the first time? And that's unlikely. You have to get those comics into new places where the demographic you're trying to get to goes to.
Yeah, no, exactly. And yeah, and they would do some of these comics, like what was it? Marvel did Spidey again in a few years ago. Just so everyone knows, anything that comes out now was done years ago. It's not new. Super Sons was aped off of a few issues of World's Finest back in the 70s.
Oh no, the hate will come out.
But I love Super Sons. I think it's fantastic. But yeah, just those concepts. It's like they already exist. But like oh god, like Bruce Wayne, like young Bruce Wayne or whatever, was like the Flying Fox before he was like Batman.
Oh, that's right. I haven't heard that name in forever.
Right? Yeah. So like, let's get a Flying Fox ongoing, right?
Yeah.
For young readers, let's do. Before he was Batman, he was the Flying Fox.
They are going to have to solve the marketing, though. They're going to have to solve like getting people to be aware that these books really exist, and they're going to have to start figuring out places they can send these books that are not the comic shop, because you have no. Or the publishers have to basically start doing marketing for the comic shops. They're going to have to start doing things to really make more people aware that these are places you want to go. But if they're not going to do that, then they're not going to get the new market they want in that old comic shop. It's just.
Yeah. Marvel's doing something right. They're co-publishing with Scholastic on a few upcoming graphic novels.
Yep.
They're doing stuff with, but the problem is it's just like Miles Morales, Miss Marvel, I forget who the other character was, but it's like you have to do that with everything.
Right.
You can't just push like a handful, like some of these like either lesser known characters or characters who are just up and coming. It's like you need to have a bunch of characters this way, because they're there are some kids who are going to be like, like Iron Man looks cool because he's a robot person. And
Yeah.
it's like, make a fucking comic for them instead of just, it's.
Well, you can't send mixed messages. You're still putting out a Spider-Man movie with Peter Parker. You have the Avengers with Captain America and Iron Man and Thor. And so when you're going to Scholastic, and it is smart, that is them trying to get comics into another venue. And then you're giving them Miles Morales and Miss Marvel. I mean, Miles Morales will work on some level because you had Into the Spider-Verse, but still, it's one movie compared to many, many, many movies. And so you can't have your parent company out kind of reaching this wide audience with these characters and then say, well, for our outreach as a comic company, we'll use these very specialized characters that really have very little content outside the comics, and we'll just try that way. It's a weird approach, and it's a bad approach. And it doesn't mean you say, okay, never put out a Miss Marvel comic or a Miles Morales comic. It means you should also have your Wolverine or your Iron Man or your Thor or whatever. You should get those into the hands as well. You can do 8 comics. You don't need to do 60.
Yeah,
pretty much ever. But
sure.
You can do 8.
No, absolutely.
Well, you've got to get these things out there, and I do think it doesn't need to be this hard.
No, but everyone works really hard to make everyone else's life more difficult when you're like looking at the answers and you're just like, why can't you guys do that? And they always have something to say back of like, oh, well, we can't do this. We got to do this, this, and this. And it's like, no.
Yeah.
But, what does anyone else know, right?
Yeah, it's a fun time. It's a fun time in comics. We asked you this before, but I guess I'll see if anything else came to mind. So as the year closes out, well, actually, somebody asked, now that you've seen more of Future State, are you more or less excited about it? Is it anything about that kind of perked your interest?
I mean, I'm old enough to remember Convergence, so I don't care. I read a few things from Convergence. It didn't mean anything. I'll try to look into some of the stuff. I guess anything with like Yara Flor, like since we know that she's going to be something later on.
Yeah.
I'll check out, but like for the most part, it does seem like they're biding their time before a bigger relaunch, and it's hard to justify diving all in on something like Future State, but I'll check out a little bit of it at least. But it's like I can't say it's a bad idea because a lot of this stuff seems like it was already in the works, and what are you going to do with this stuff?
Yep.
So I can't blame them for that. I think overall it's going to be more of a detriment to DC because a lot of people are going to be less generous than I am and just be like, I'm just going to wait.
Yeah. I think that's a likely outcome. I think a lot of people will just pause and wait. I'm not excited by, so you look at the different lines. I think Batman is going to hurt a little bit in this. The storyline they're going with of the magistrate, and there's big shadowy government, and the police are after him, it's a police state and everything else. It feels very tired as a Batman concept.
Well, it's not only is it tired and has been done a million times, also done pre-crisis. Like that Jerry Conway run was all about the police turning against vigilantes during a mayoral race, and that's almost 40 years old now.
Yeah.
But beyond that, I mean, Batman's in a really weird spot right now. Currently, Batman is going out of his way, and a lot of the Bat books, I don't know what the hell is going on, but everyone's like defending serial killers.
Yeah.
Like Batman right now is going out of his way to be like, I know Clown Hunter has murdered dozens of people, but come on.
He's a kid.
And it's like, who the fuck is this Batman? This is this is an unrecognizable Batman. A Batman who's like, come on, Ghostmaker, don't take in this serial killer.
Yeah.
It's like, what the fuck is going on?
It is a weird, the run is strange, and it is troubling to me because DC is going to be putting a lot of their hopes on Batman just to protect their overall line, and it has been a strong seller. They got a movie coming out, but it's a very oddly written Batman right now. And then simultaneously for the next year, you're going to have the Batcat fuckfest comic that is going to be out, and it's a very strange part of their line, but that is kind of what they think their centerpiece is.
Yeah, that's weird. I mean, the Punchline one shot was awful.
Yeah.
Which is a shame because I love the people who are working on that book, but it sucked.
Mm-hmm.
But but then we have this Batcat thing and Phantasm's in it, and it's like, is this? I guess it's not in continuity because Phantasm doesn't exist in this universe, and like,
it's the Omniverse, Joe. It all matters, but doesn't. Together.
Yeah, it's really weird and confusing, and it's everyone else's fault if it doesn't work.
Yeah, well, that's always the way. I feel like Wonder Woman's getting it together more or less. I would love to see a good Titans book again that committed to like something that wasn't one of their own members is crazy. That would be nice. Just for a while. Just for like a couple months at least. I don't know. I think some of the Future State books will probably be pretty good. I think some will be good, some will be terrible, and it'll be about like what we, same old.
No, I mean, I'm looking forward to, I don't know, Planet Hulk Superman or whatever. Like, sure.
Yeah, sure, why not?
Yeah, exactly. Like, it's like all right, let's just keep this going, and then like I'm sure Batman will keep going, and they'll just keep rehashing old ideas, and whenever they start, spinning the wheels, they'll just be like, "Oh, it's the ventriloquist. You're a '90s kid. It's the ventriloquist." And, it'll just be shit like that, or like, we already had, the 4 clay faces when Norm Brayfogle was drawing it. Let's do the 6 clay faces, and like, it's just gonna be all that, and like now Batman has 7 dozen Robins, and
Jesus.
it's like they're getting to a point where like literally every citizen of Gotham is gonna be a Robin at this point. It's just like like we're like a few years away from City of Robins as an event, and if they do that event, they better pay me.
City of Robins.
It's going to be City of Robins, and then it's going to be Universe of Robins. And,
I was going to say we could have done 10 of Robins, but we've already passed 10, I think, at some point. So,
House of Robins, Powers of 10.
Powers of Robins. Yeah.
And then like there's too many. I just like Batman's a loner who has a bigger family than anyone I know.
Yeah.
It's just like they keep doing all these things to like undercut their own characterizations of people. It's like, why does Batman have a more stable family than Superman at this point?
It's true. I mean, Batman's more or less kind of married-ish, having lots of sex apparently, and he's Harley Quinn's part of the family, and the Robins are all there, and he's got the Fox family as part of his family, and but he's also going to let go of his technology and operate more street level because that's getting to the core of who Batman is. But Batman's also got a cast of like 50 people hanging out. And anyway,
it's true. And I can tell you this now because he's dead. But Denny O'Neil,
oh no,
his whole thing was like, Batman doesn't make sense after like a little over 30 because the second he gets laid, he's going to stop being Batman.
Well, sure. I think that's the plot behind King's book is they fuck in the first issue, and then and Tom King promoted this, by the way. This isn't just me being flippant, although I've had some whiskey.
No, that's fair. But yeah, Denny O'Neil's like right on the mark. As soon as like Bruce Wayne has sex, he'd be like, "What the fuck am I doing?"
I'm looking forward to like the Batcat issue 3 where they go to IKEA and then they kind of get lost there, and it could be a fun issue. They spend some time eating the Swedish meatballs in the middle.
I was gonna say it's got to be 8 issues of Swedish meatballs, or 8 pages of Swedish meatballs.
Do I have the time and energy to make like a Dawn of X style title with data sheets of like the X-Men shopping in IKEA, and you can see the menu there, and you could have like the instructions on how to put together a cabinet or something.
All right, here's some real talk from Joe. Did
Okay.
anyone fucking read those pages of just like the swords and the descriptions of the swords? And if you did, do you remember a fucking thing you read?
Why are they doing those? I mean, I see them there, and it's like it's novel, and by the way, there's some people I know in the chat who love the X-Men universe, loving those data sheets. That's good. Please don't take any of this as like you're stupid. It's
No, of course. I'm personal friends with multiple people working on
Yeah.
Ten of Swords, and I love them dearly.
They're good, yeah, good people, and this is definitely hitting the mark with somebody. But I'm with you. Like they keep coming at me, and it's like I don't know why. Who's reading this? Nobody's. And then what are you getting out of it? Like, are you memorizing this? Is this like I'm trying to think? Okay, my shop's gonna be back open up by this time next year. Am I going to be standing behind the counter and somebody's going to be having an argument with me about a detail of the sword that was revealed in the data sheet of Excalibur 13, 10 of Swords, chapter 20? Like, I don't want that.
The thing that killed me is they list all the swords from everyone at the end of Ten of Swords destruction, and it's like, now the swords don't even fucking matter. Why are you telling me now?
Yeah. Well, yeah, and then they're like they're just hanging out now around the planet. I mean, what was that scene with Storm taking the sword knife thing back to Wakanda, and people are kind of glaring at her? Like, I mean, I don't know. You could have just sent it FedEx. You didn't have to go over there.
Yeah, have someone else go there. But the other thing too is like I feel like they really downplayed the international catastrophe consequences of Storm needing a sword for like literally 3 pages.
Yeah, she did use that sword, I guess, in the dance fight with Death, where he did
like 2 or 3 pages.
He turned into a vampire, I guess.
Yeah, whatever. It was like a reflective surface that she used the sword with, but it's like, can't you get other reflective surfaces? Did it have to be that sword?
I mean, can't they just? Yeah, somebody put in here. Can't the writers just like start a Wikipedia page and just put the stuff there? Like, you don't need to waste ink on this.
Yeah, I mean, some of it's cool, but it's been overused.
The light of Galador is an alien blade of cable that will continue to power the sword station above the Earth until a replacement lighter can be found or constructed. So his sword is like a key, and they've just left the key in the space station, and it's just so somebody's working on a replacement key. Like, fuck, are we getting that comic?
Oh, does this mean we're just gonna get Kingdom Hearts, the X-Men comic? Well, we did the MMORPG comic, so now let's do the Kingdom Hearts comic. They are owned by Disney.
Giant shoes? I don't know.
Giant shoes, and Wolverine will go murder people with Donald Duck and Goofy.
Okay, I would play the hell out of that.
Right? Like, just, or like Mickey, and he'd just be like, I guess he'd be really scarred from that.
I mean, the data sheets, yeah, the House of X Powers of 10 data sheets were solid. They added value.
Yes.
And then they've turned into like menu pages or jokes or.
Well, Jordan D. White, to his own admission, said some of them matter and some of them don't.
Yeah, then don't print them. I don't know. Now I do want to see Donald Duck mashed up with Wolverine though.
Right?
Yeah, I think that's what we need. That's the best.
We've seen some good Wolverine mashups. What was it? What was the name of the one that was the like Peanuts Wolverine mashup from a while back? Weapon Brown.
Okay. Yep.
Yeah. We're probably not going to do a retrospective of Weapon Brown, not to disappoint everybody.
Probably not. That wouldn't be.
Although, like, one of these retrospectives should be just something really fucking stupid, like Space Beavers.
I want to do so. Okay, yeah. I again wrap my head around that. We need to do the Marvel Mangaverse though.
We absolutely need to do the Marvel Mangaverse. I was buying the Marvel Mangaverse at the time because I was a stupid teenager who liked anime.
I think. Oh, I've got a question here. I need to ask. The guys asked it twice. I apologize. I haven't got to it. So we should do it. I've got news for. I got at least 2 of the creators who worked on that who will come and join us.
That would be great. Yeah, because there's so many interesting things about the Mangaverse where it's like I see where this could have worked, but also like, what was Marvel making you do? Like,
yeah,
like the Spider-Man stuff, where it was like rival like dojos. Like, what the fuck were they thinking?
Hey, so for the people in chat, we probably should wrap this up. I'm being told that I apparently have to make dinner. That's always nice to know.
That's good.
Being a family man. But let me ask you. So William writes here, I'm probably one of the few people that love the Inhumans and New Humans. What would you do to update them and bring them back into the MCU alongside the X-Men? Well, first, I wouldn't bring them alongside the X-Men. I would separate. I wouldn't tangle those two up at all. I don't know. I think you could put a title. You could do a team book, and you could start to build that up. You just got to get a good writer on it.
Well, the big problem is you need to stop going back to the Inhumans because they decided they only have a couple of stories they want to tell over and over again. If you want to read like the best Inhumans run, I think is the Marvel Knights. What was it? Paul Jenkins, Jay Lee run.
Yep, that was a great run.
That's great. It's like the best Inhumans you'll probably ever read. If you like the Inhumans and you haven't read it, find that run. I think it's only like 12 issues or whatever, but it's fantastic. Read that. If you want to do something to incorporate the Inhumans into the greater Marvel universe, have them interacting with the X-Men, you have to tell a different story. Stop telling the same fucking stories that are just the same, like, oh, my brother's betraying me, and like, stop it.
Yeah.
Stop telling the same fucking thing that they've been telling since the Silver Age of comics, and do something new.
Well, don't try and do. I think this is where you get writers like Game of Thrones is on TV. Boy, we should do Game of Thrones with the Inhumans. And it's like, or you could just do like a nice tight superhero book with like 6 of the Inhumans, and then make that good, and then add some more.
Yeah, and you could keep them on the moon and have them be like this celestial sort of team that's like, the front line against invasions or something. Like, there's things you can do.
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's
like Earth's first line of defense, the Inhumans, or something like that. Like, you could do something like that and make it interesting.
Yeah, I mean, arguably that would have been a thing you could have done with Sword and just kind of this taking over for the Planetary Defense. I don't know. There's a lot of things you could have done, but you don't try and world build out the gate. I think that's the mistake, and it feels like that's kind of the mistake that the X-Men's making. Like, you don't need to your point, you don't need to necessarily make an MMO. You can make just a good comic and then slowly expand.
Yeah, have a strong narrative. If you have a strong narrative and plant some seeds and throw some breadcrumbs at other things going on, that's going to make me go like, oh, I want to know more about that. Like one of the things when it comes to like, when people are talking about this being like this really expansive thing, X-Men currently, and saying like how similar it is to Claremont, it's like they're mistaken, because Claremont would do incremental, like he would incrementally solve things along the run. Mm-hmm. You would finish something and move on to the other thing. There would be things going on in the background that you were interested in, like Shadow King and stuff like that. And other people have mentioned this. But like, the problem with this run right now is everything's in the background, and it's just people bullshitting with each other in the in the foreground. And like all the stuff that's really interesting, like Moira and other aspects, it's like, we literally have not seen Moira in over 100 issues.
Yeah.
That's a problem. If they end up making omnibus editions of this, and you read House of X Powers of 10, you would read 3 entire omnibuses without an appearance from the entire fucking point of House of X Powers of 10.
Yeah.
That's a problem.
It's a major problem, and it's you make her the linchpin of this kind of new story, new status quo, and everything else, and then you bury her and you run off and do other random things. It's that pacing problem again. You're just going to have it. I don't know. It feels like world building to no tomorrow, and Hickman typically has an arc, and that's it's the trust Hickman, and people should trust Hickman. He's a good writer, but still, like we're a quarter probably into his game, and we're still just building and building and building horizontally. It's going to be very strange, and it's a ton of comics.
It's too many comics. It's a lot of spinning wheels, and there's nothing happening. There's not even like character development with these people. What the fuck was the point of Cyclops being like the war captain if he didn't get to do anything?
Well, sure. I mean, we never got much of him being the war captain before he kind of made the announcement that he's going to do his own thing. And I think that's part of the status quo that comes out of this, is that he's off. He's going to do his own thing. And I mean, okay, but you never really set up any of this. The Krakoan government, I saw a review that said it's, the Krakoan government has been slowly turning more and more sinister. It's like, not really. It's kind of been kind of douchey from the beginning, and we rarely see it, and it always seems kind of pointless when we see it. Like I don't think that there's been this subtle shift. It's just kind of there.
Yeah, and like, why couldn't Cyclops stand up to Apocalypse for 2 seconds there?
Sure. Yeah, starting to feel like the TV show Lost. I think that's the point. Yeah.
But it's just like, because they just made up all these things. Like, there's all this rich X-Men history, and they're like, there's a Roca and a fucking mask and all these other new mutants, and it's like, but you already planted all these seeds. We're just ignoring that and doing all these other things. It's weird.
It's very, very strange. I don't get it. But hey, we should wind this down.
Sure.
I'm going to go get some more whiskey. It's always nice.
Good idea.
Cook. But Joe, thank you very much for spending the time with me. We're going to hit Legion here probably next week.
No, it's going to be great. We're going to talk about some great characters. Fuck you if you don't like Bouncing Boy. Bouncing Boy's wonderful. There's a lot of and I heard on another live stream, I think last week, like people like making fun of like characters like Lad and Boy and stuff like that. They're teenagers. Sure. Leave them alone. It's like I'm sorry, Lightning Lad, a teen in the 60s is too stupid of a name for you. Like, it's like not every, like, I don't know, because then you get to the 90s and it's like, ooh, darkness, that's so scary, like, ooh, Witchblade, that's cool and edgy. Like, fuck you. Like, it's like, oh, Cyberforce is really cool. Like,
How's been that whiskey for you?
It's been pretty good.
Yeah.
it's a good time. But yeah, it's like, you will all, if you're lucky, live long enough to know that everything you thought was cool was really fucking stupid.
Words to live by. There you go.
Yeah, it's true. I mean, you go back, like, all that stuff, like, in the 90s that you're like, this is so cool. This is so much better than the stuff in, like, the 70s. And now you're old enough to go, like, what the fuck was I even thinking?
It's funny. This is the great part about comic and that we can have a nice argument about all this stuff. I think I was the one who tipped this over because we were watching I was watching Titans with my wife, and she's looking and she's seeing Aqualad.
Yeah.
Like, Aqualad? What? And it just, but that's part of the comedy and the enjoyment that we have these different eras and we have these names. And the key thing is, I think you don't have to fix it. Like that's one of the charming, and there weren't many things I enjoyed about Titans, is that it's like, just use the original name, just own it. It's fine. It operated back then, and then you're doing something in the future, and you can call them Deathstroke or whatever you want to. There's just, you can play with all these things. It can all live together, and we can have some some fun with it. But.
No, absolutely. I mean, I think the dumbest stuff is like, I'm sure you've seen some of these clips of like, you know, Zack Snyder and people working on Man of Steel just being like, well, you know, we had to get rid of like the trunks because, you know, trunks are stupid. And it's like, what the fuck are you even thinking? Like, you're actually like, you're like, oh, Superman without the trunks, that's real badass, but put the trunks on him. And it's like, you're out of your minds. Like, are you listening to what you're saying? You sound like idiots.
You don't need to solve that problem. That's not a problem you need to solve. It's
like just, you think the problem to solve is the trunks, and it's like, oh, you're going to ignore the fact that this planet Krypton blew up, red sun makes him weaker, but it's the yellow sun that gives him superpower. Oh, all that's fine and normal, but the trunks, like that's really hard for people. It's like, you're all idiots if you think that's the fucking problem with Superman.
No, it's every era has its cool stuff, its bad stuff. The thing that I wish they would quit doing, like, don't try and dip into those eras for nostalgia purposes and then want to poke at them. Like, we're getting Adam X runs a kind of extreme snuff YouTube channel next week in X Factor, and it's like, you know, you could just have Adam X be out there being weird Adam X. You don't have to try and now make it make sense in today's context. Like, just let it alone.
No, I know, but we've talked about X Factor, and
Sure.
you know, it's no Peter David's X Factor Investigations. I'll tell you that.
It is definitely not.
That was it's one of the I think that's one of the most underrated X runs out there right now. I've read that entire run. I own multiple pages from that run. I think it's absolutely fantastic. You know, I strongly recommend people pick that up, especially if you're like, I love X-Men and I don't know what to do with myself because the current stuff is the current stuff.
Mm-hmm.
It's like you can go back to that, and you could start from the Multiple Man miniseries, House of M, into the run, and read Messiah Complex, Messiah War, Second Coming. You know,
a lot of comics there.
Yeah, Children's Crusade, Schism, like all that stuff, all taking place through the run, and use that run as an anchor, and it's phenomenal.
Yeah, no, there's always something you can turn to.
Absolutely,
for sure.
Yeah.
Well, Joe, thank you very much. Thanks to everybody in the stream. We had well over 100 people for the vast majority of it, and that's awesome that you guys did.
That's great. I'm sorry that you had to deal with, you know, me drinking cherry flavored whiskey and yelling about Superman's trunks, and like, when I was your age, I knew about Batman before Crisis.
It's fun. This is what we'd be doing if we were in a shop and we're hanging out. This is the kind of fun we'd be having.
Exactly. You know, like, you kids don't know your Gene Collins and your Don Newtons. And
I'd just be getting progressively drunker. So
yeah, no, I'm probably going to do that after this anyway. But
good call. Good call. Well, thank you very much, Joe. Have a wonderful Black Friday shopping from home experience, I guess.
No problem. I'm going to check some sites and see that all the deals are already sold out since the stream started, and it'll be great.
Yeah. All right. Have fun, everybody. Talk to you next week. I think next week we'll be dealing with a lot of DC news, so that will probably be all what's going on. Yeah.
Sounds good. And read comics, enjoy, have fun.
Do those things.
Yes, please.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.